All right. So we worked through the main level. We worked through adding floors and walls and the decks on the outside. And we added the roof, right? So we have our cute little house, right? And so the first thing I'm going to do tonight is add the basement, and then I'm going to add a basement floor, and then we're going to talk about adding stairs that go down to the basement. So I'm going to add the basement walls, and we did this I think once or twice throughout the semester when we were talking about adding basement walls, but it's a little bit of a but it's a little bit of a confusing topic. Basement walls always are. And the reasoning, I think, behind that is that in Revit, when you are adding basement walls, I think the best way that I have found to add basement walls is to add them from the main level, funny enough. Even though, they're basement walls. So you think, well, I want to add basement walls in the basement, right? But the reason I like to add the basement walls, and I say basement walls meaning in the form of foundation walls, so we're going to be adding foundation walls around the perimeter. The reason I like to add foundation walls from the main level is because of the way that foundation walls generate, okay? So they generate in terms of, if you think of a house as, the main floor is a plane, regular walls generate, you define the base constraint and they grow upwards, right? That's how a wall grows. But foundation walls, they grow downward, essentially, right? So when you are creating foundation walls, you're going to think of them in terms of being created from the top down instead of the bottom up, right? And so even though it's a little bit of it's weird to draw foundation walls on the main level floor plan, I just think as I work through Revit, it's been the easiest way to do it for me. And it has the least amount of errors that I found. So I'm in my main level floor plan. What's that? Yes, yep. Don't worry. And I'm going to come over here to the wall command. And let me just say, again, this is specific to foundation wall types, okay? It's the foundation wall types that are defined like this. So I can, when I create the interior partition walls, I can still go to the basement level and define interior partition walls from the basement up, right? But it's the foundation wall that defines from the top down, okay? So let's see. Foundation wall, I'm going to choose the 12-inch concrete foundation wall. And you'll notice that immediately you see how the constraints go kind of crazy. Base constraint level 1, base offset negative 12 feet, top constraint level 1. Okay, so it kind of starts to formulate a solution for the I start at the top and I move down definition, right, as opposed to from the bottom up. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose my base constraint as the base is the basement. I'm going to give a 0 base offset, and the top constraint will be level 1. All right. And so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my little picker tool here, which is pretty handy. I also could have used my my line tool here, and I'm just going to start picking walls, essentially. I'm going to choose to define my walls from the finish face exterior. So as I kind of pick around the edge of my project here, right, if I pick on that outer face, ideally, the walls should form from that outer edge and grow inside of the house. So I'm going to click, and immediately I get an error, and Revit says, you can't see those from this floor plan, but we expect that because we're creating foundation walls. Okay, so don't panic too much. I'm going to click here, click here, click here, click here, and I just keep getting that error. We're not going to panic about that because I am creating the walls on the lower level, and I know that. And likely our little chimney should probably have a foundation wall, although I'm going to leave that out for now. All right, so I hit escape. I went around the perimeter not, being able to see anything. What I actually kind of like to do as I create my foundation walls is I like to open up a 3D view of Revit, and I like to do WT, window tile, and I like to, on a full screen of course when I have that, I like to have this little guy on the screen at the same time I have this one on the screen, so that as I draw those invisible walls around my house, right, even though I can't see them in my floor plan view, I can somewhat see them over here in my 3D view, okay? So I'm going to take a little bit closer look over here at my 3D view, and I'm just going to look and see, oh, everything actually lined up rather nicely, right? Everything looks pretty good. They all join together. So the finished face exterior generation, right? That lined these two planes up, that the face of the block and the face of the concrete, right? If that had not happened and I needed to align those two objects, right, which happens, I could have used align in a 3D view to achieve that. So AL, I'm just illustrating what we could do. And you see that we can select the face of that block, click, and I could select the face of this, click, and then those two things would align, right? So if they hadn't quite aligned, we would align them, all right? So there's our lovely little house, and it has a foundation wall now, right? And I don't have a footing on here yet, which we haven't quite talked about, but I'm going to add a floor in there for now, and then we're going to talk about stairs, and we'll kind of move around to a few different topics related to those two. So, well, in fact, I'm just going to go to the basement floor plan right now, and I think I will talk about adding a footing there, okay? Let me go into a north elevation. Okay, so here's my north elevation. Looks great. And I've got all of my levels defined. That looks wonderful, right? And I've created my foundation wall, but I don't have a footing below that foundation wall, right? And I really kind of want to create one of those. This is the source of a lot of discussion, I had a couple semesters ago, I had one person that was very specific about the way he liked, he'd kind of taken a little bit of a Revit course and knew a little bit about Revit. And he started showing some students a different way of doing footings, and so I'm going to talk about both ways and why I choose one way over the other, okay? So the way that I like to create footings in a Revit model is I like to create a wall type that is a footing, all right? And what that means is that I create a concrete wall that is about 24 inches wide, and then I define it over here in my model to be 10, 12 inches tall, right? And that's my footing, okay? So it's a wall type essentially. And what I like about that is that it's easily edited. It's an architectural element, which means that within the model, when someone else looks at it or uses my architectural model, they understand that those footings were put in by me, right? Not the structural engineer, okay? This is kind of the same thing as the whole foundation wall topic. The other way that you may have seen of adding footings is to use this little structural foundation wall tool, right? And it is actually really easy to use, right? So I can come in here, I can click on this, and I can just start clicking on walls, and magically it starts adding footings to my, right? And you think, well, gosh, that's super easy, right? But the problem with these is that they actually are surprisingly hard to edit and hard to move once you've got them in place. And so even though they're very easy to place, they're hard to move around, hard to edit. And then when somebody else comes and looks at your model, these these elements, they're shown as a bearing footing, and it was created as a structural element, right? And so, sorry guys, excuse me. And so, all things aside, right? It's a structural element, and so we don't want to use that because we don't want it to be confused with the structural elements that do get put into our models. So, so I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to hit undo, right? and I'm going to create a wall type to add my footings. All right. So part of that will also be that I have to create a new level. And so I'm going to add a new level, which is LL. The shortcut is LL. Okay. And this level is going to be called bottom of footing. I should have. Here we go. Maybe there's like asbestos in the building today, right? Maybe that's why. I haven't heard them drilling though in here for a while. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to add a level that's called bottom of footing. And let's make this, we'll make it just to be evident so I can see what's happening. We'll make it 2 foot. Okay. So now the way that I'm going to generate my footing is going to be the same way that I generated my foundation wall, right? I'm going to now go to my basement level, and using a foundation wall, I'm going to add just a really wide, short wall to the underneath of my foundation. So the first thing I need to do is I need to hit Edit Type on my wall type, duplicate, and we'll say this is a 24-inch footing. Edit the structure. There we go. Oh, I changed it. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is to go to wall, WA, or go to wall with my footing. And I'm going to use the pick tool. And my location line here is going to be wall center line because my footing is going to sit directly center line underneath my foundation wall, right? And I'm going to just go around and click. And it says, hey, you can't see any of these things. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I'm going to click, 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 click. And we just go all the way around. Footings are a little wily sometimes. Sometimes they work. Generally they work. Let's take a peek. And there we go. There is our lovely footing, right? And it works. I've made it very thick, obviously, right? You could make it the whatever it needs to be. But there's my footing. Okay. So now if I wanted to, for example, go to level 1 here, right? And if I wanted to add a section cut here, click, click, I can see my little footings down there. Okay. So there's no magic to creating footings, right? I think that it's just a different way of thinking about it, but now these are highly editable. They're easy to manipulate. They're architectural items showing design intent, right? And it doesn't confuse anybody which is what would happen if you use the structural elements, essentially, even though they're really easy, right? Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. All right. All right, so let's talk about, I'm going to go back to my main level here. And let's see, we want to talk about, oh, sorry, I forgot. I need to add a floor to the basement, and then we're going to talk about stairs. So I'm going to go back to my basement floor plan. Everything looks wonderful, right? I need to add a floor to my basement, which will be a concrete slab. So I'm going to come up here to floor, and oh, I don't have one in here, so I'm going to create a floor type I want, edit, duplicate, edit type, 6 inches, or 4 inches, sorry, 4 inches. Okay, I'm gonna hit okay, okay. And I'm just gonna draw the boundary of my basement level here. Now, if you had wanted to, right, say in the basement, hey, I like the foundation wall, that's wonderful. But what I would really like to see down here is some framed walls in front of those foundation walls, right? Some gypsum board walls in front of those. Let me talk about how to do that. I'm gonna hit finish, and there's my floor. Okay. I have my concrete foundation wall here, but there's no, the wall's not furred out, meaning there's not a wood stud in front of here with gypsum board on it. And so if you wanted to show that in your basement, you could, and it would be as simple as editing the wall type and adding on the interior side the wood stud and gypsum board, essentially, right? So I could choose insert, and this would be well, we'll do it, actually we'll put it up one. No, we'll leave it here. We'll call it a substrate. And this will be the wood stud. Softwood, there we go. And then insert our finish, and that's going to be gypsum wallboard. And because my coarseness level is set to coarse, I can go to fine, and now you can see that. Now you can see that wall, right? So if I did a shaded view SD, we could see that furred out wall all the way around the interior. Okay. So I also could have created a second wall type and called it furring wall or something, and it would have just been gypsum board with, or a stud with gypsum board on one side. And I could have just drawn it on the inside of that, right? But the problem with that is that they're not connected. So if I ever had to move the exterior wall, right, I would have to adjust both wall types on the inside to make it work. So this makes it easy. All right. So I'm going to add some stairs. All right. So I'm going to go back to level 1, and we want to add some stairs, and the stairs are going to go right here, right? We talked about that for the midterm or late term. And they're going to go from the basement level up to the main level. And likely, I think it's just going to be a straight run. I don't remember how tall these ceilings are from level 1 to the basement. 10 foot. Okay. But we're going to create some stairs. Okay. So the first thing I sort of want to point out about creating stairs is that before you even generate stairs, you're going to need a hole in the floor for the stairs to pass through, right? We're building a little virtual model of this house, and so anything you would do, to construct it, you want to do in the digital model, which means that I have to create a hole in my floor to accommodate the stairs. So I'm going to tab, 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 until I can find my little floor boundary. Where is it? Walls, walls. There we go. Floor. Click, click. And I want to create a little opening in my floor right here, just on the edge of the floor plate, to create my stairs. Okay. Now, just like a lot of things in Revit, I don't right this very second. I may not know exactly how big that stair opening needs to be. In fact, how wide did I make it? 5 feet. Okay. But I'm just going to create a hole so that I can very clearly see it. You could draw it perfect if you knew exactly how big your stairs were going to be, right? But I'm just going to create a little opening here. Trim, 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 trim. Okay. And I created an opening just sort of by changing the outline of the boundary, right, to leave this piece out. You can also create openings kind of in the interior just by creating closed regions, right? So that would be an opening if I would have left it, but I'm not going to. but this is also an opening. So I'm going to hit finish. And now I have an opening in my floor for my stairs. Now if I pop into 3D here, I'm going to turn on my section box, and I'm going to drop the top down here and look inside my model. There's my little opening, right, for my stairway. You can see it there, right there. All right, so time to create my stairs. Now, stairs can be quite complicated in Revit, actually. And Kevin and I have a very different approach to stairs. All of you know Kevin, but we have a very different approach to stairs. He very clearly likes to do them one way, and I think my very clear preference is another. But you know, however you want to do them whatever works for you is going to be just fine. So the way that Kevin likes to do them is he likes to use the assembled stairs. So he likes to take components, like a component stair. He likes to add a landing, a stair run, a landing, a stair run, and use predefined pieces in Revit to create his stairs, right? Which is completely valid. I have a harder time getting those to work for me. And I feel like when I'm adding stairs, it's usually, in this case, it's fairly straightforward. It's a straight run of stairs, right? But for me, I prefer to sketch my stairs because usually they're highly custom. You know, they're fitting within some stairwell somewhere. And they're a specific shape and size and need a specific amount of risers or runs, right? Or treads. And so I find that it's just easier for me to do a sketch. All right, so I'm going to show you both ways and how they function. So if I go to architecture and I look here at stair, I can click on stair and I'm bumped into a sketch mode. Okay. Now, a couple tricky things about stairs. When you're generating your stairs, you are going to want to make sure that you define the base level and the top level immediately. Because if I come in here and I start then drawing stairs, I've drawn stairs, right? It is harder now for me to redefine the base level and the top level and actually, well, that was probably not a good definition, actually have the stairs change to accommodate that, right? A lot of things in Revit are very editable. When you change one parameter, another changes with it, right? You move a wall attached to it moves with it. Stairs are a little different though, and it didn't used to be this way, funny enough. I think actually previous versions of Revit stairs were better. It used to be that if I decided, oh, I don't want this stair to be a 7-inch maximum riser, 11-inch tread. I want it to have, you know, a 6-inch riser and a 10-inch tread. I could, after I had drawn them, made that change, and Revit would say, hey, that, you know, your stairs don't comply anymore, but we're going to recalculate. And it doesn't do that anymore. So if you don't get it sort of defined the first time correctly, I found kind of the best way of going about changing it is just to delete it and to redraw it, for me at least. So I'm going to cancel out of this real quick. And there are also a couple of tools from 2018 that are not, they're not here, or at least I haven't found them in doing stairs in 2019. And in fact, hold on, I'm going to pull up something. Hold on 1 second. Okay, hold on. 2019. No, I don't think it's there. Anyway, there's something I'm going to show you in a second. Okay, so I guess maybe the best thing to do is just show you how these work, right? Stairs have a stair type associated with them, just like any other object in Revit. So walls, doors, windows, they all have a wall, door, window type, and they all have a definition associated with that, right? To create a new one, you choose the assembly that's most closely related to the one you want to generate. You duplicate it, rename it, redefine it, and then use it, right? Same thing. Stairs, when you generate them, they have, when you, for example, want to create a new stair, you can hit edit type, right? We'll duplicate this and say, we'll call it new stair. You can hit OK. And now all of the properties associated with stairs are shown here in the Type Properties dialog box. And there's a lot of them. So I'm not going to go over every single setting, but I'm going to go over kind of the most basic pertinent ones, which will be the riser height. Oh no, they show a nice little graphic. Look at that. I don't think that used to happen. The riser, right, which is the height, the tallness on a stair. So the vertical rise, and then the tread, which is the horizontal run on the stair, just like that. There's your tread, right? So we have a riser height, and we had a tread depth. Okay. We also have a minimum width of the stair, so how wide the stairs are going to be. So those are kind of the main things you're going to really want to pay attention to specifying. The other things are mainly construction and aesthetic items. So is your, let's see, do you have stringers or, oh, they even give you nice little photos now. Look, number 1 is an open tread, right? Number 2 is it has stringers on both sides. And number 3 is, you see that it's open, which means there's a stringer on no side, right? So I like that. You can kind of look at it and graphically see now what's going on. But these are all going to be things, just construction techniques, construction methods, options, and then aesthetic, right? So you'll see things like what kind of tread and nosing do you want to use, right? So what is the tread material? What is the riser material? The thickness of the treads, all this good stuff. To alter all of these, really it's as simple as clicking on it. There's going to be a drop down, and if there's not a drop down when you click on something, usually it will give you, it'll go to a place where you can choose options. So if I choose landing type, I click on it. I don't want that type. I want to change something. It will give me the option to go into that and change it. Right? So you know, kind of the first time that you define this, there's a lot of work involved because you are looking at the rise, you're looking at the run, you're looking at the type of structure on each end holding it up, right? Do you want risers? Do you want open risers? What is the riser material? What is the tread material? So you're looking at all of those different settings, okay? So I think I'm going to, let's say the maximum riser height is, we'll bump this up a little bit because we have a ceiling height. And we'll make the tread depth 10 inches. And we'll make the width 4 foot. Okay. And the tread and nosing, those look good. All of these functions look pretty good. The right support, we'll just do some open carriage. So we're not going to have stringers on either side. Right support. And here I don't think we're going to have any, so we'll have none is chosen. Okay. And then left support is going to be open, so it looks good. And our landing type is monolithic. Same as run. Yep, that's what we want. It's an interior stair. So I'm looking for the riser information. There we go, risers. So you can choose the tread material, the riser material, if you want it wood, metal, concrete, whatever it's going to be, right? Here's some more aesthetic things. I guess they're aesthetic. They could, you know, be more construction related. What I really wanted to get at was here is where the risers are defined. So if you want risers in your project, you need to make sure this checkbox is checked, right? The riser is the vertical height on your stair. And if you check that, there will be a riser there, like a wood riser, a metal riser, whatever. And if you uncheck it, it will be an open riser so that you can see through, right? See through the stairs. So I'm going to uncheck that just for fun. I'm going to hit OK. OK. And that just defined my new stair. All right. So now I've defined what type of stair I want to be using. My base level, is going to be the basement, and I want this to come up to the main level, level 1. So now what we're seeing happen is Revit will do all the stair calculations for you, right? So no more calculating how many stairs and how tall they need to be. Revit says you want to go from the basement to the to level 1, and you have a stair that has an 8-inch riser and a 10-inch or a 10-inch tread. Well, that's great. That means you're going to need 16 risers, right? So Revit automatically determines with your constraints how many risers you're going to need. Okay. So there's a few different ways you can create stairs. I'm gonna create a couple of different types over to the side, just so you can see them. This is something that you'll likely have to practice a few times in order to get it right. And I'm just gonna say, don't get frustrated because they're somewhat tricky to use, right? There are two ways of creating stairs. You can do it with components. So components meaning you see this little stair right here? That's a run. So if I click on run and I use one of these different predefined stair types, we have straight, we have spiral, we have center end spiral, we have a winder, and we have a U-shaped winder. If I pick one of these shapes in combination with this little guy, right, when I draw my stairs, they're automatically generated. You see that? Click. Okay, so that just defined the two side boundaries. It defined the tread depth, the riser height, and also you see this arrow pointing up. That defined that that is the up direction. All right. Now, I'm not done drawing my stairs because I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 generated. And over here, it tells me I need 16 generated, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna draw maybe where my second run of stairs would be. And this method, the assembled stair method, you notice that as I start to draw my second run of stairs, so if this was an L-shaped, right? A landing forms between those two stairs, and I get that kind of ghosted text that says 7 risers are still remaining, right? And as I create them, you see they subtract from the remaining value. Click, right? So I have stair number 1 up to stair 9. I have a landing, and then I have stair 10 to stair 16, okay? So by doing that, I've just created an assembled stair using components, okay? So that's the first way of going about things. I can hit finish. I can go into 3D. Where did I draw it now? I know I drew it off to the side, but how far? How far off to the side? There it is. Okay. So there's my little stairway, right? If anybody's ever drawn stair sections in AutoCAD or right by hand, they're a pain in the neck. To draw, to figure out, to draw sections of, all a big giant pain in the neck. So this is really simplified, right? Which is great. You're going to notice that all of those definitions that we created are there, right? So we have a 10-inch tread, we have an 8-inch riser, and then we have a space for a riser actually. It's an open riser system, so we can see through our stair. Okay. You'll also notice that in creating my stair, a railing was automatically generated, right? I have a love-hate relationship with railings in Revit. I think they're probably the worst developed thing in Revit. So at first when you start using them, you're like, these are magical. It's a miracle. Look at all this stair stuff that's been generated. You use them a few more times, you're like, these are the devil. They don't work. They do work, but in more of a commercial application where you have stairs that kind of wind one on the other and the railings have to be continuous and meet specific life safety codes, they get a little crazy on us. But what I want to point out is that the railing is separate, right? And then we have the stair here. So if you wanted to, for example, delete the railing, you could do that. I'm gonna hit undo. Or you could just leave it as it is. Okay. Now I could click on my stair and I could hit edit type for my new stair type, right? It's just like any other type of something in Revit. And I'm going to go and put the tread back in just so you can see what the tread will look like. or the riser, sorry, the riser. Look at that. Now we have a lovely riser, right? Although I kind of liked it without the riser. So after I finish the sketch, I can go back and I can create, I can choose aesthetic changes within the stair type, right? I can change the way the tread looks. I can change the way the riser looks. I can change to a different railing if I want to, like a pipe railing, and it looks like that. But what is difficult and that I can't do very easily is change this to say, oh, I want this to go from top of footing. See, it says, hey, wait a minute, stair top end exceeds or cannot reach the top elevation of the stair, right? So it kind of moved it down, but it didn't really alter the stair. So this is this is something kind of, like I said, it's somewhat new in the newer versions. The older versions, and I could be remembering earlier more wonderful times, right? But I'm pretty sure you could edit the stair and it would alter it a lot more real time than it does now. Okay, so that's way number one of creating stairs. Okay, let me just create a couple more using this component method. I'm going to go to architecture. I'm going to go to stair, and to create my components again, I choose these shapes. All right, so I'll choose this shape here again, and I can go from level 1. My base level will be the basement. My top level will be level 1. I could just create a straight run, which is what we're going to do for our house, right? I hit finish, and there we go. Okay. I'm going to pop into 3D and we'll just take a look at that. It's just a straight run, and the difference between a straight and an L shape is that we don't have a landing here, right? Pretty simple. I'm going to show you one more time how that landing was generated. Stair. I'll draw a few stairs here. Click, 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 click. The way that the landing is generated is that I generate a few stairs, and then whichever direction my stair is turning, I sort of move in that direction. But I have to be kind of careful about how I think about the landing. If I choose here, click, you see the riser or the landing doesn't form because there's not enough space for it to form, right? If I choose here, click, you see how my stair is not outside this edge of the original stair. So if it's the stair is coming in perpendicular to that, I get a really crazy looking landing. So if I am too far in here, I get a crazy looking landing, or it just doesn't work, right? If I come very far outside, oops, that works, right? So you just have to kind of find that good spot where the landing is going to function for you, right? So if you want it to kind of rightly turn, I'm gonna probably find a halfway point. What are these stairs? 4 feet wide. So at 2 foot, right, I could kind of turn, and those stairs meet very nicely at the corner. So there's my stair like that. Okay. So I can hit finish, and there's my stair, and it goes upward. Okay. If I want to edit a stair that I've already generated, like if I want to make it look different, when I hit finish, it's like editing sketch mode, right? So I exit sketch mode, and I can go on working. Now, if I want to edit the stair, I double click on it, click, click, and I'm brought back into my sketch mode to make changes if I need to, right? I can hit delete with that. I can delete my landing right there, and I can come back and I can add, stairs however I want them to be, right? So I can go back in and I can change the shape pretty easily. All right, hit finish, looks wonderful. I can pop into 3D and take a look at that one, and everything looks good. All right, so the other way of going about drawing stairs, right? So when we are, one thing I do want to point out is that I've created a set of stairs here, and it says down here, so that means that this is the high point on the stair, this is the low point on the stair, right? If I accidentally, and for whatever reason for me, in fact, I might Google this real quick, and I feel like I've tried both ways of going about creating these, or several different ways. I've started in the basement and allowed them to create up towards the main level. I've started on the main level and allowed them to generate down to the basement level. I have started from the bottom moving up and the top moving down, right? And I feel like for whatever reason, I always get the direction of my stairs wrong. They're always going the opposite direction that I want them to go, right? Which in AutoCAD would be heartbreaking. But in Revit, what's nice about stairs is that when they're finished and I select them, I get this little grip right here. And if I click it, it just flips the orientation of the stair. So even if I get it drawn completely backwards so that it's going up when it should go down, I can click that little reorient, right, the little grip, and I can make it correct, right? Because it's always the right shape, for me at least. It's always the right shape, it just goes in the wrong direction for whatever reason. There's got to be some drawing methodology. And like I said, I've experimented. I need to look up the formal way. All right, so there's a second way of going about drawing stairs. And the second way of going about drawing stairs is to sketch them. All right, so I sort of prefer that. It's slightly more complicated, but I feel like stairs are kind of a complicated deal, and they're always pretty custom shaped. And so I like to be able to control highly how many risers, or I mean, how big the treads are, the shape of the stair, different spacing, right? So I like to, a lot of times, sketch my stair. So if I click on stair, if I choose any of these preset shapes with this little run right here, I'm allowed to add components. So chunks of stair, chunks of landing, chunks of stair. If I click on this little pencil right here, I'm bumped into a nested sketch mode in Revit. So I entered stair sketch mode. If I then want to sketch a custom sketch, I click on my pencil here, and I'm bumped into yet another sketch mode. So to get out, I have to hit finish twice. Okay, not complicated at all, right? And instead of you seeing the little stairway, right, you're going to see things like boundary, riser, stair path. So instead of creating chunks of components of objects, I'm going to be drawing outlines of things. So I'm going to be drawing the outline of the boundary of the stair, the outline of the riser, and then showing a path. Okay? So there's some little tricks to these, of course. This is Revit. And the trick with the boundary is that you really should only have two lines that kind of don't touch. Okay, for a boundary. So I'm going to click on boundary, and I'm going to click on my drawing tool. And, oh, you know, I forgot to do. I forgot to define my level, so I had to hit escape. Let's go from the basement up to the main level. There we go. Sketch. And I'm going to choose my boundary again. Boundary. So boundaries are green lines. This is what a boundary looks like, okay? And for a straight stair, that's what a boundary looks like, all right? The tricky part about this is remembering that you only have two lines that don't touch, all right? I say that it could be segments of lines. So I could have a stair that sort of looks like this, okay? And I could have another stair that, or another boundary line that goes like this. Okay. But the point is the two boundary lines don't touch. One boundary line, they don't touch, right? So there's nothing in this area. Okay. So it's funny, I was drawing a set of stairs today for a project, and I kept getting an error, and I was so frustrated. And I just thought, why do I draw the stairs like this? Why do I continue? I should just break down and go the easy route. And then I realized what I was doing is I had created a boundary line like that, right? And it was messing everything up. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, but just know that boundaries will only function if they're kind of open-ended and the lines are not touching. Okay? So you're thinking, well, what's going to fill in those gaps? Well, the risers are. So we draw our boundary, and then we click up here on riser. Okay. And the line that makes these connect will be the riser lines. All right. And and the riser lines, now here it says you've created 1 riser and 15 remain. All right. So what's nice about this is that I can, I can copy this riser line down 3'6", and I can create custom landings. If I need to have a custom shape riser, like this is really odd, but if I need to have a little, oops, okay, I did it again. If I need to have like a little wedge shape, right, something like a winder, I'm allowed to create those custom shapes with my riser tool. So in this case, I'm just going to grab it and I'm going to CO copy, or actually I'm not going to copy, I'm going to use my riser, I'm going to use my pick. I'm going to give this a 11-inch offset. I'm just going to start creating my risers. And you see as I create them, Revit counts down right here. 5. And if I needed to make a landing in the center, right, I could say, well, do an offset of 3 foot. There we go. Oh, it went past my boundary, but I can go back and I can alter that a little bit later. Okay, so 2, 1, there we go. And I have all of my risers. I now need to, oops, just drag my little boundary line down there so those edges meet. And that is how I sketch my custom stair. Now, kind of the nice thing about this is that I've created a very simple straight stair, but kind of the strength of this tool is, well, not, see, Arc is still my nemesis, even if not in AutoCAD. If I wanted to, right, I could create an extremely custom shaped stair where maybe my risers kind of go out this way, right? I've got a really swooping kind of custom stair where each riser is longer than the other, right? But the intent of the sketch, I could do that. I'm not going to. I'm just going to create one that works tonight like that. But the intent of the sketch is so that you can create very custom stairs. So I've got my nice stair. I have my 2 boundaries. They're not touching. They are joined by the risers, so the risers have to touch both boundaries, right? So in the case of having something that looked sort of U-shaped like this, right? And we will say offset of 3 foot. In the case where I had something like that, right? My boundary is open. I can choose my risers. So they would look something, I kind of define my landings first, but they sort of look like this, right? So, and then I have risers in between. Okay, so that's what it would look like. So I have everything created, everything looks really good. The final thing that I need to do before I hit finish is I need to create a stair path. And this talks about where you're gonna, where the path of the stair goes, essentially. So it indicates the walk line, meaning I'm gonna walk from here to there. Okay, so we have 3 parts of the stair: the stair path, the riser, and the boundary. I'm gonna hit finish. And because I sketched, I was in a double sketch mode. I'm going to hit finish one more time. And I'm going to pop into 3D. And there's my nice custom stair. It's a little bit weird, doesn't it? My little riser, or my stringers aren't quite working the way they should. Not even down there. It's odd. So that's what the sketch is going to be, right? So I think maybe when you're first starting out, maybe some good advice would be to use the component stairs. Everybody's like, I'm not sketching stairs if I don't have to, right? No way. But if you end up going into commercial architecture, right, or need to create something with a custom shape, you know how to sketch it, right? But I think it's probably okay to to create just a component stair. So I'm going to go to my basement level, and I want to create my stairs here, and I'm going to turn on an underlay so I can see my level 1. Right, there's my little opening. Looks good. I'm going to go to stairs, and I'll do my component. Be good. It goes from basement up to level 1, and I'm going to draw my stair. Oh, I can. Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could. I'm just going to draw them in place though. So I'm going to draw my stair, and I can draw it from the center. I can draw it from the left side or the right side. I'm going to choose the right side. And if I draw it from the right side, you see it draws like that. If I draw from the left side, it goes on. Oh, well. Okay, this one's functioning pretty easily. Usually it goes the opposite. It's usually the top, right? Or I could go down the center, and then it draws them center line. But you can move them, right? So again, Revit, I draw them so they work, and then I move them where I need to go. So I'm going to choose the right side. And I think I'm going to have my stairs start here, and go down, go down. So I'm going to draw them, get them somewhat in the right spot. So it tells me, right, you've 8 created, 7, 6, 5, here we go. We have all of them generated. Click. Okay. And I'm going to hit finish. I don't have a landing. And so again, it's always opposite for me for whatever reason. I don't understand. Oops, I did one too many. So I changed the orientation of my stair, right? So now this is the bottom, and it goes up that direction. What I'm going to do to move it, just move like moving anything. Get some pins. MV, move. Click. I move it down into the corner, and then I'm going to move it where I want it to go. So I'm going to MV. I'm going to move it maybe, I think you only need it 3 feet, but I'm going to move it 5 feet away from that wall. So you're up here. Oh, nope, we can't do that. We don't have space with that wall. MV. 2 foot. Let's see how much space we have here. Oh, barely enough space, right? Okay, so we have our nice little stair. Looks good. And if I go upstairs now, let's go to the main level, level 1. I see my little stair there. It looks good. I made the opening a little bit too large, right, on my floor, so I'm going to click. And I'm going to AL align the opening now to my stair. AL. Okay, hit finish. And there are my little stairs. I'm going to pop into 3D. And I always like to make sure my stairs never work for me, so there is the wrong way. So I always kind of like to make sure that they look the way they should. And they do, but I don't really like the railings. Okay, we'll do final topic today. We'll talk about railings to finish up today. And then on Monday we'll finish up with the garage. So I think that's a good way to go about it. So that looks pretty good, but of course, you know, my little kids would jump off there and, you know, break their arm or something. So we need to change the railing a little bit. All right. The railings they're a component of the stair, but they're separate. So yeah. So we can delete them separate from the stair and not worry about the stair being altered. Okay. So I can click, delete, click, oop, click, delete, and everything looks good. There they still are. All right. And I'm going to add a railing that is separate from my stair. I'm going to go to my main level. And the railing tool is simple. It just has kind of one restricting rule associated with it. Okay. If you go to architecture and you look above the stair, we have railing. Okay. And there is a way to click on place on stair or ramp. Okay. So this is kind of the quick way of adding a railing, where I click on it. I click on the stair and it added a railing. If you didn't see that, it hosted one right back where it was. So very simple way of adding a railing to something. So I'm going to undo that, and it took them away, right? So that was place on a stair or ramp. Okay, so you host it to something. The second way of going about adding a railing is to sketch it. Okay, so I can go to sketch path and I can choose which railing I want. Let's choose we'll choose our glass panel one for fun. And I can sketch a path for the stair. Now, I think if I were to, again, give some advice on this, if you are placing your railing back on a stair, the place on stair is the easiest because it will follow the stair very nicely. Okay? If you're drawing a railing that is going to be straight, then drawing a sketch is easier. All right? So in this case where I want to draw a railing that goes from here to there, I'm just drawing a straight railing. I'm just going to use my sketch mode to do it. So I click on line. I'm going to give maybe a 3-inch offset from this edge of this opening. You see that? So it drew it 3 inches away from the opening. Click, click. Looks good. Now the key to a railing is that you have to draw the railing in a continuous line. So I can't draw one here and then draw another one over here and not have them connected. Otherwise I'll get an error. Okay, so I can draw as many railings as I want, but they all have to be separate pieces if they're not touching. Okay, that's kind of the little rule for railings, essentially. Okay, so I can hit finish now. I'm going to pop into 3D, and I've got my lovely, lovely railing. Okay, I could, if I wanted to now, say, let's host one on, this one's a little odd without getting into some customization of railings. I'm going to do place on stair, click, and I could have it draw a little piece that sort of connects these two, draw a little segment right there, right, to connect those two going down. I could delete one side if I wanted, leave that side. Anyway, you guys kind of get the idea. Which leads me to, oh my gosh, we have these death traps over here, right? Again, my girls would be jumping off of those. So we'll choose railing, sketch a path, and I can draw a railing now that, oh, where's my deck? There it is. And one more piece. And you say, well, you just drew 3 lines. Actually, I'm going to draw 4 lines. And that's acceptable. TR trim, click, click, because they're continuous, right? They're touching. So this railing will work, but if I had then drawn another railing over here somewhere that wasn't touching those segments, it wouldn't work. So I can draw railings now. That nice expensive railing on our little house there. And we actually have one more little segment of railing over here, right, that we want to generate. And we will do that an offset. And it's on the wrong side, so I'm going to space bar. They don't want to fall out of the tub while they're bathing on their patio. There we go. And we have our little railing there. Looks wonderful. Okay. So for this model, we have we've got, you know, some components to put in there. So some furniture, right? The countertops are all components. There's some doors and windows. And then kind of the main thing left is really getting the garage in, right, for the late term project. So. What about that ceiling where the roof? Oh, yes. So that's a good question. Okay. So there's a little problem with this model, right? And the problem is that, let's see. The problem is that we have a little gap, right? These two roofs, and they are 2 separate roofs, they're offset a little bit, right? So we have this little gap in there where nothing happens. And so we need to put something there to cover that, right? This is actually a pretty common thing that happens in Revit models, funny enough. So what's going to happen there is I'm going to go to my level 1 and I'm going to turn on an underlay here to see my roof. There we go. So I can see my roof outline there. And where's my other roof? Oh, let's go to my low roof. Chimney. Top of wall. There we go. There's my other roof. So there's kind of a gap in between those two areas, right? So the way that we're going to have to fix that, essentially, is that we're going to have to draw a wall all the way across here. That is where it is, right? We'll look at it when we get there. Okay. And what's going to happen is, let me go into 3D mode. I'm not positive I'm in the right place. Let's see. I want to do a little section box here. This is the best part about Revit, being able to look. What am I looking for? This section box. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that looks, I think that's in the right spot. So what we're going to do here is we drew this wall on the main level, but we don't want it to show on the main level. It just needs to show up above, right? And so we're going to say, well, this starts, we're going to talk about the base constraint in a second. It's going to go all the way up to the roof. Okay, so it goes pretty tall. And we can't see it because I have a section box going. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give it an 8-foot base offset so that it disappears from the main level, right? Do you see that happen? This is kind of tricky. So I don't see it on the main level. But there it is, right? So it runs across there. It looks like I maybe didn't go quite far enough. So I'm going to AL align. A little bit of a weird join there. Maybe when we, attach top to base. That needs to come up, huh? Actually, maybe it needs to align to the face there. There we go, that looks right. There we go. And then this little guy looks like it comes out far enough. So we essentially just had to fill in that gap with a wall that we gave a base offset to, right? So we see it above, but we don't see it below on the floor plan. So now I'm going to grab this and choose Attach Top to Base. Click, and there we go. Okay. Any other questions so far? All right, well, we'll finish it up on Monday then. The garage and all the other stuff.
I still have the same problem with the main door. The door has window more than 10 feet.
Oh, we'll add the windows too then. We'll do that. We'll talk about it. Yep, we'll do it on Monday.
Thanks.
Okay. All right.
Can I also do wooden ceiling?
Yeah, we have enough time, I think, on Monday to do the garage, add some ceilings, add some windows and doors. I think will be whatever kind of loose ends that we have. So work on them this weekend. Make sure you don't have any final questions, and then we'll just wrap those all up on Monday.